Hey, what's up, everybody? Sean here, doing another monthly recap. The purpose of these recaps at the Fitness Journey is so that every month I basically give you the TLDR or the Cliff Notes version of my previous month, as well as do a little bit of reflection on the overall journey so far, so that for anybody watching these videos later in the future, which I'll get to that in just a second. But anybody watching these videos in the future could essentially start with these videos. And then if they want more details about the pains, the successes on a week to week basis, they can follow up on my weekly recaps, which I'm releasing essentially every week. The caveat to that is currently, right now, it's 29 June. If you've seen some of my other videos, I've identified that I'm deployed out in the Middle East. And the last couple of weeks here have been a little bit crazy between Iran and Israel, as well as US involvement on strikes. Right now, there's a ceasefire in place. So, as of right now, whereas in my previous monthly releases and weekly releases, I release them on time. I'm recording these videos, but not planning on releasing them on YouTube until a few weeks later. So, like, the earliest that we'll probably see this video out there will be, I don't know, maybe mid July, somewhere around the 20th or so, assuming everything stays quiet. I'm doing that primarily for security reasons. There's some information, especially in the more recent videos in this one, that could lead to operational security concerns if the conflict is ongoing or kicks up again. So if everything stays quiet and looks like it's going to stay quiet, I might release these videos a little bit in the future, and then you can come back and look at them at that time. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the 3 month recap. All right, so some of the changes that were continued from the previous months. Again, the entire process here has changed a little bit. I'm not a fitness expert. I'm not a fitness guru. I am a doctor, but I'm not a doctor in medical science. So I'm doing a lot of learning as I go along. That's why I'm doing these reflections every month and with them making adjustments as needed. So some of the changes that did happen in the previous months, so month between month 1 and 2 and between month 2 and 3, is that I decided I would focus on pushing to failure for the strength training. Previously to month 2, especially, I would just add in different amounts of sets. Some were easier to continue doing sets of 10 or 20, 15, whatever. But with that, I was pushing my body to failure for those particular muscles, whether it's curls or shoulder presses or bench, whatever it is. Some of the research out there indicates that's the point where you really need to hit if you're going to make progress and get the muscle gains. Continued from previous months, also added more fruit into my diet. Especially the first month, it didn't really have a lot of fruit in there. I would have a lot of protein, a lot of vegetables, but not a lot of fruit. Something that I didn't change, or that I did change from month 2 to month 3, is that in month 2, I tried to have a little bit more grain as well, including some of the different balances diet. So the rice, the quinoa, the breads. But again, they impact the gut a little bit. So I've cut back on the grains again, and I focused on getting the nutrition that would normally come from the grains, your fiber, your specific vitamins that would come in, and getting them from other sources like the vegetables or potentially some of the proteins. Trying to do more ab work. Honestly, that's an area where I was lacking a little bit, specifically the first month, beginning of the second month. So one of the things I started doing is ensuring that I had at least 1 or 2 different ab work exercises in each day of exercises, whether that's doing the sit-ups, reverse sit-ups, the bicycle kicks, those type of things. One, it gives my arms a break on some of the strength training days. I guess legs break as well, but some of the ab works also work the legs as well. But it gives a little bit of break in between sets, and then also helps focus on building the muscle so that the love handles aren't as prevalent, and there's a little bit of muscle that shows up beneath them. Did add a 2 mile run at the end of each day. Again, there's an asterisk there because the last 2 weeks, really, from where I'm at right now, that didn't necessarily happen because, again, the situation here in the Middle East warranted wearing a body armor anytime we're outside. And it's not really easy to run with 2 miles when you have 40 pounds on outside in full military uniform. So a lot of those got cut. Tried to still do a little bit in the treadmill inside while it was open, but again, those got shut down as well as part of security. And then the last thing was trying to focus on a little bit of predictable progression. So with that, I changed up, I think it was midway through month 2, where the sets that I would do basically sets of 10 for a particular exercise at a particular weight. And then I would do a set of 5, at least as a starting point, of a higher weight. And then each instance of that exercise, basically every 6 days, I would come across that same set of exercises again. I would add an additional rep to that heavier weight. So ideally, when I hit the ability to do 10 reps at the higher weight, then I would replace the base set, doing that for 3 sets, and then I would increase the weight for the heavier sets. So far, it's been going good. This is day 1 of week 13 right now. Because it's basically been about a week and a half since I've been able to get into the gym, I actually cut back a little bit on the weights just to get a reset on a baseline. Obviously, if you don't go to the gym for 2 weeks, and then you're not going to be able to pick up exactly where you left off. So I backed it off a little bit. Hopefully, I'm able to get back to where I was pretty quickly. I had some other thoughts and reflection of the last couple of weeks. Progress still has seemed to slow. I was hoping with some of the change ups from month 2 to month 3 that the progress would pick up again, but it's not necessarily the case. I've broken through a couple of plateaus, but essentially, as I'm doing that predictive increase in weights, I'm basically able to add about 1 rep every 6 days to each of the different exercises. It's going slow. And then again, the last couple of weeks, especially before the gym closed, I wasn't able to add anything else. I was basically peaked again at the 8 reps or 7 reps instead of making my way all the way to 10. So with that, I looked at a couple different options, did some research. One of the things that I was looking into was potentially starting creatine as a way to get a little bit of that extra ATP built up into the cells for the push for those extra weights. But that's something that'll be a week or a month 3 beyond approach. The unexpected can happen. Obviously, we were not necessarily expecting what happened here in the Middle East. Everybody was hopeful for peace talks with a nuclear deal, but that didn't happen. And that kind of threw everything into whack. Obviously, we had to do some preparation for that. And that impacted day-to-day business, day-to-day life. It's not limited to military life like that. That can happen back home when you're doing these exercise programs. Something can come up in your day-to-day life that is completely unexpected, and unfortunately just need to be able to adapt. Luckily, and I guess hopefully that'll be the case here, where we can pick up where we left off and continue to make progress. Right now, I'm about the halfway point, so hoping I can still make a lot more progress between now and the end. Important of tracking calories. So I talk about that one because especially at the end of month 1, early part of month 2, I really hit a plateau as far as weight loss. And there was actually a point in there where I actually gained weight, even though I'm doing the alternate day fasting. I was trying to think to myself, how am I essentially cutting out all the calories of an entire set of meals for a day, plus doing exercise? That by itself should create a deficit of about between 2,500 and 3,500 calories per day, depending on the level of work. So how can I get that multiple times a week and still gain weight? It turned out I was just eating a lot more than I thought I was on the feasting days. Simple things like adding a couple slices of Swiss cheese to a meal. Each slice of Swiss cheese is about 100 calories each. So if I put 2 slices of Swiss cheese in breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's 600 calories right there. Eating let's see, salads, they were pretty good. Having breakfast burritos, that's something I enjoyed having for breakfast. The tortillas themselves are about 100 calories. So little things like that, I didn't really know how much calories I was eating until I started using a fitness tracker. I think I'm using MyFitnessPal or something like that, that has a pretty decent mechanism for tracking calories. Everything like that is essentially a an estimate at best because nobody knows exactly how many calories are in a particular portion, whether you have a full portion or multiple portions. And no meal in there is a exact one-to-one copy for what is being served at any given time. The amount of calories that are used for sustainment is a best guess for any person. You can take your age, your height, and your weight and come up with a best guess, but the amount that you walk per day, the other exercises, it's again just best estimate. But if you at least have an idea, it can help you track. And what I was identifying was that I was almost 1,000 to 1,500 calories over when I was taking my feasting days, and that was ultimately pushing me above the break even point for calorie deficits for the week. The first month and a half, I really didn't do it, and I was losing lots of weight. But a lot of that was, I think, newbie gains or newbie losses in this case. There's a lot of extra fat in there, and obviously, going from doing no work to a bunch of work obviously pushed the envelope there for what could be lost. Visual differences are more apparent to others. I say that because even though in my week to week videos, I have a little video recording of myself compared from where I started the previous week and the current week. Myself, I can't really identify on a week to week basis where there's visible differences. However, people that I work with have commented many times that looking a lot thinner, looking healthier. And that's obviously reassuring because it means that it's visible to other folks, even if it's not necessarily visible to me. And then last one, it is hard to gain strength and lose weight at the same time. It's one of those either or for the most case. At the beginning with the newbie gains, going from doing nothing to jumping in there to doing a lot of work, I was able to get quite a bit of weight loss as well as obviously increase the strength that I had with the weight training, which you'll see that in a couple slides here, seeing a steady upward progression of the amount of stuff that was tracked on a week to week basis. You can't really gain the same amount of strength and lose the same amount of weight because you start needing to have that extra number of calories for strength training, for muscle building, and that really goes against the weight loss. What I'm planning on doing is at least trying to maintain, maybe try to push a little bit more with that slight progression each week until I hit my goal. So I've got about 15 more pounds. So I hit my goal of 150 pounds, give or take. And then from there, try to focus more on the strength side of things. So as you can see here, there's a lot of information in general. It's a upward trend, especially from where I started to where I am now. Definitely making progress. But again, as the weeks have gone on, that progress has slowed quite a bit. And of course, week 11, you see a lot of those just drop off. That's because that was one of the weeks that there was no gym. We basically shut everything down here for security. So weren't able to go to the gym to do the bike machine, wasn't able to go outside and run. It made an obvious impact on the exercises being recorded. And it was like that for basically 2 weeks. This stuff has up to week 11. I think we're in, I don't know. So week 11 ended last weekend. So week 12 technically could have been included here as well. But when I made this, I didn't have all that information completely out. And essentially, week 12 would be the same as week 11 with no running, no bike, no exercise. So not really much anything to report in those cases. All right. So where are we looking at here? So in general, started about 185. I got down to essentially 160 before all this kicked off. And then week 12 back up about 3.5 pounds. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is because obviously not being able to go to the gym, go outside and run those 2 miles that I wanted to, and any other high calorie type exercises or calorie burning exercises. And two, during everything here, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, it was a heightened level of stress. And one of the things I tried to do to reduce that stress was eat some of the comfort foods. I cut out the alternate day fasting during that time just to make it a little bit easier on myself. And with that, I actually took the opportunity, since I was planning on start taking creatine. I was originally going to have it after during week 13 when that starts, but I decided to do that about a week early, since creatine, when you do a loading phase, is generally easier to absorb when you take it with food. So with that, I took advantage of the opportunity that I was going to eat more anyways, because I needed a little bit of extra energy to do the 14-hour days, plus carry around 40 pounds of body armor everywhere. Added some creatine and then doing 20 grams per day spread out across 4 different sessions. And with that, when you take creatine, it's going to add a lot of water retention into the muscles. So some of that 3-ish pounds that were added is probably related to water weight. Some of it is also probably related to extra calories and not being able to work out, but there's a consideration there as well. Hopefully, now that the gyms are back open again and we can run outside, I'll get back and start losing weight again. All right, so what are some of the other things that I'm looking at going forward? One is the introduction of creatine into my daily usage. So loading phase, today's the last day of the 7-day loading phase. So I'll have my 20 grams today. And then going forward, I'm going to have 5 grams every day. Hopefully it doesn't cause too big of an issue with alternate day fasting. Again, taking it on an empty stomach, they say you could have some side effects, but that will be something that will be reviewed in the next weekly video for week 13, I think it is. Another thing I'm going to start doing is tracking body fat calculations. When they close the gyms here, I was using the gym for a scale to track my weight. So if you look back on one of the previous videos, you'll see that there's a gap in there where I couldn't measure anymore. I was able to find a scale locally that actually had the metal bars on the side that's supposed to do the body fat calculation. I don't know how accurate it is, but I'm going to start recording that as well and see if that starts moving the needle at all for body fat overall as I continue, especially as I lose weight. It's one of those, yeah, I wish I knew in the beginning if I had something to see where my body fat levels were at week 0 compared to now, but at least I'll have it for months 3 through 6 here and see if progression is made, assuming, again, that's accurate. As I mentioned before, this is being recorded at the end of June. Probably won't actually see this released until the middle of July, assuming everything stays quiet, inshallah, as I say. But we will hopefully get back to the regular tune of things and start seeing the weekly updates released to the week that they're recorded and monthly updates released the month that they're recorded. If you watch my month 2 or month 1 videos, I try to have an AMA with that. Again, I'm not going to do that here because it can't be live, but if there are people that watch these videos as they get released and you have questions and you comment them in the comment section, I will take those into consideration and try to answer them during these monthly recaps. But for now, that's all I have. I appreciate anybody who's watching this. And until next time, that's all I got.